Hey guys, it's Dan Stevers. This is a walkthrough of my new free overlays pack. I'm going to show you guys how to use these overlays, how to make your own motions, how to add them to other motions to create new looks. It's free to download on my site, so go download that. Probably either the 4K or the 1080 HD version. I'm working with the HD version just because it'll be a little quicker to work with. So this tutorial is going to be kind of more for beginners than advanced After Effects users. So if you're super familiar with After Effects, this tutorial may be a little bit slow, but I just want to make sure that I'm not leaving people who are new to After Effects behind. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to import our overlays folder into After Effects. So we're going to go to File, Import, Import File. And mine is on the desktop here, so I already imported that, but you'll just want to click open on it. So I've already got that here, and it's got our folder structures here. So we're going to go ahead and play around with some of this stuff here. Why don't we grab our line web file right here. We're going to grab it, and we're going to drag it onto this little icon that has a circle, a triangle, and a square on it, and we're going to let it go. That's going to create a new comp from our footage there. And so we're going to grab another one of these elements. I think we'll go for the X and O small. And I'm going to drag that into my timeline here. This bottom panel is called the timeline here. So I'm going to drag it, and you'll see a blue line. I want that blue line to be on top of the line web file there. Okay, so we got it on there. Now we can't see our line web file, and that's because we need to experiment with our blending modes here, which are right over here. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to hit set that to screen. So now we can see both of our elements here. I hit circle on my number pad here, and that starts this green bar rendering here. And once it gets to the end, now that means it's fully rendered. So now it's playing back this file for me. So there you go. Just like that, we combined two elements. Now the cool thing about this pack is I made all of the elements 10 seconds long, the files. So you can drop as many of these as you want on top of each other and play around with the blending modes, and it'll all seamlessly loop. So that's pretty awesome. Okay, let's take this a little further. Let's grab one of our gradients here. So we'll create a background in this. So I included some free gradients here that you can use with these. So let's grab our gradient orange-red file, and we're going to drag it on the very bottom of these. Now we don't see it because the line web file is set to a normal blend mode, so we'll just set that to screen as well. And just like that, now we've got our elements on top of a gradient background here, which looks pretty great. Now, like, what if we don't want this to just be white on this color background? What if we want this to add some color to it? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to let's click on our line web file, and with that selected there, we're going to go up to Effect, Color Correction, Tint. Click that. Okay, now I want to change the white value of this file because that's what we're seeing right here when we use a screen mode here. The black disappears and we only have the white. So I want to change that white to a color. So I could just use this little eyedropper here, and I can grab like the orange on the top of the gradient there. Click OK. I can go over to the X and O file here, and I can do the same thing. I'll add another tint to it. Maybe this one, I'll select that pink. It's a little hard to see right now. Why don't if I click on this pink swatch here, it opens up my color panel, and I can maybe just brighten it up just a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. And that looks pretty cool. Maybe I'll change the blend mode to add to see how that looks. That makes it pop a little bit more, so it's a little bit more visible. And that looks pretty great there. So if you want to render out your file now out of After Effects, we're going to, let's see. You know, I never actually use, oh, here we go. I'm trying to do this the long way. I always use hotkeys here. So if you go up to composition, you go to add to render queue, and that will queue up your render. And you can change the output too. So I'll just put it on my desktop. Click render, and just like that, you've got your first seamless loop file that's rendering out here. Once this is done, we'll go in and we'll do another render. A quick tip about the rendering: if you push the caps lock button while you're rendering, you'll notice that it's no longer previewing. You don't see any movement up here, and that actually can increase your render speed a bit. So if your render's going pretty slow, I would recommend hitting that caps lock button. Okay, so now our render finished. So I want to hop back to our project over here. You can also click on the composition window here, and then we'll get all of our timeline stuff back here if you just want to click on that. Okay, so let's go on to using mattes with these elements. So I'm going to twirl these up. Let's see here. I used one of my motions from my Mercury pack called Flowing Stars here, and you can use whatever video file you want. I've got some free motions on my site that you can download and experiment with. So I'm going to use this one. I'm going to create a new composition. So you grab whatever video file. You can grab one of my free motions from my site, or you can use your own video footage if you want. Okay, so I created a new composition from the Flowing Stars there. Now I'm going to go back to my Elements folder here, and I am looking for Expanding Circles. And I'm going to drag that on top of my Flowing Stars layer. Okay, so in order to do a track matte, there's a track matte option to the right of the blending modes here. To do a track matte, you want the footage that you want to be visible underneath the matte layer. So this Expanding Circles is our matte layer. So with the matte layer on top of our footage, I'm going to click on track matte, and I'm going to go to Luma Matte. That uses the black and white values of the layer to create transparency. So just like that, now I've got my footage using the matte layer above it, which looks pretty great. If I hit play on that, if I hit 0 on my number pad, I should clarify that, it starts rendering it out. So there we go. That looks pretty great. Now these matte files I actually made at 60 frames per second, which means that we'll be able to slow this down. I feel like it's going a little bit faster right now. So in order to slow our footage down, I'm going to right click on the layer on the timeline there, and I'm going to go to time, and I'm going to go to time stretch. So since I made this 60 frames per second and our composition is 30 frames per second, I can stretch this out to 200%, and I won't have any lost frames in there. So now if I hit that 0 key on the number pad and render it out, now our matte layer is going a lot slower, and I think that matches the speed of the footage a little bit better. Okay, if I want to have something rather than the black, I think I'm going to duplicate this Flowing Stars layer. I'm going to hit Command D. I am on a Mac. I believe it would be Alt D on a Windows. I'm not entirely sure. So I'm going to drag the Flowing Stars layer below the other Flowing Stars layer. Now, I've got a problem right now, and that problem is that I have a Luma matte on this layer as well as this layer. When you duplicate a layer in After Effects, it also duplicates the track matte mode. So I just want to turn this off down here. So right now, we're back to where we started because we have this layer that's the same layer using the track matte. What I want to do is I want to rotate this footage so we get some difference between the matte layer and the layer below it. So I want to do the rotation. So with that layer selected, I'm going to hit R on the keyboard. That brings up rotation. I'm going to select this value here and type 180. So I'm just going to flip it around. Now I'm going to hit 0 on the number pad again. And now I've got a pretty cool looking motion here. So let's play that out. So this looks great. I would say this is done, except for the fact that if you look at the timeline right here, you'll notice that the expanding circles layer is a lot shorter than the footage layer that we have. The footage I have is over 2 minutes long, whereas the expanding circle layer is about 20 seconds long. So I need to fix this. I need to extend this expanding circle layer out so it matches the footage. So what I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to my expanding circles layer here, and I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to go to interpret footage, main. And now I want this to loop. I think we'll do it 6 times. You'll have to figure this out based on the footage that you're using. Just figure out, you want it to be almost as long as the footage, but you don't want it to go longer than that. So by doing 6 times, I got it almost the right length of it. Okay, so now we need to grab this little point on the layer here, because we need to drag it over, because if we click over here, we're not seeing the matte layer. That's because it's not visible, because this layer needs to be dragged all the way over. Okay, so we've got it almost all the way to the end, but we're still missing a little bit of the end right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to time remap these flowing stars layers so that they match the length of the circles, and so we get our nice seamless loop here. And before I do that, I want to check the time, the frames per second that we're working with. I'm going to go up to composition settings. Now the footage, this flowing stars is set to 29.97. I just want it to be an even 30, because it's an easier frame rate to work with, and it's fine since we're time remapping. So After Effects will figure out all that frame rate stuff when we do this. So with those 2 layers selected, I use Shift and I click one, and then I Shift click the other one to select both. Right click on those, go to time, and then enable time remapping. Okay, so now I've got some keyframes at the beginning and at the end of my layer here. And you can use this little guy down here to zoom in. So we can zoom in, either that, or you can just use the plus and minus keys on your keyboard, which is a lot easier. And you can also drag it along on the bottom down here to navigate through your timeline. I'm gonna click and drag, so I grab both of these. Now I'm also gonna hold down Shift, and what Shift does is it makes these keyframes snap to the like certain points of interest. So it's snapping to the end of this layer. It also snaps to my marker on my timeline. Okay, so I'm gonna hold Shift and have it snap to the end of that layer here. And if you just click anywhere along here, you'll grab the timeline marker here. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm going to Shift and click. And now I can push the plus key, or you can just zoom in using your little zoomer here. We just wanna make sure that these keyframes are not here. Sometimes when you're clicking and Shift dragging, they'll snap 1 frame before the end of a layer, which is annoying. You just wanna make sure that those keyframes are at the very end. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit the N key with my timeline marker set 1 frame before these keyframes here. I'm gonna hit the N key. And what that does is it puts an N marker here. So now when we render out, it's only gonna render out from this work area start to the work area end. So now we just created our seamless loop here. So now this is ready for render. We can go through that render process and do that again. But I'll skip that, and we'll just jump on to just one more example of how to use this stuff. And so let's, I'm gonna close that up. Let's see here. Let's create something using, I'm gonna use this glitch cross layer, and I'm gonna drag it into the icon to create a new composition. Okay, so I've got that. think I'm also going to use this no other name file, and I'm going to drag that above the cross there. I'll set the blending mode on this to, I'll just do it to lighten. Now the difference between lighten and screen is screen will actually increase the brightness on the layers when you're combining them, but sometimes I like to do lighten because then you avoid getting the super bright areas where the layers overlap. So this looks pretty cool here. Let's go ahead and use some footage, and we'll use some track mats, and we'll experiment with some of the techniques that we've been using. Let's see, I'm gonna grab this blue twister file. This is from my free pack Effervescence on my site. If you want to go download this blue twister file, I just have the HD version of it. I'm gonna drag it below my no other name file there. I'm gonna set my track mat to Luma Mat. Cool, so now we're using that as a mat, and it's using our blue twister footage. That looks great. I think I'm actually going to drag that glitch cross layer above because I want that to be on top. Now I'm going to use this purple glitter file, which is also from the Effervescence pack. You can download that if you want. I'm going to drag that below the glitch cross. I'm going to set it to Luma Mat. And let's try playing that right there. Okay, well, that right there looks pretty neat to me. So right now you can tell that we've got some time problems though. Our footage is extending beyond our composition here. So let's see here. How long is this? We can check the time code. So these are both 30 seconds. So we just need to go up to composition settings and change our duration for our composition here to 30. Now if I hit the minus key on the keyboard and zoom out, now we can see that we've got it the length of the footage, but the problem is our glitch cross layers are not the right length. I'm going to show you a quick little tip to find your layer rather than having to go to the folder over here, twirl down all the options and stuff. You can just right click on the glitch cross and go to reveal layer in source project. I use that a lot to help find the stuff that I'm looking for. Now that it highlights it, I'll right click on that, go to interpret footage. So since the glitch cross layer is 10 seconds and the footage layer is 30 seconds, I'll just go to loop 3. I'm just going to do the same for the no other name one. I'll just click reveal in layer source, interpret footage, loop, set it to 3, drag that out, and boom, just like that, you've got a motion that's ready to be rendered out. Let me just go over one last thing, because when you're rendering out, I'll go up to, so we'll go to add to render queue, but you can also use Command Shift M to add it to render queue. So I'll add that one to the render queue. Oh, whoops, I actually accidentally clicked off of the render queue. That's no problem. That could happen to you too. So if that happens, just your render queue is one of the tabs here in this bottom section here. So I have this set to output to the desktop. I'll just hold caps lock on that. So that is rendering out. I'm gonna go into Media Encoder because it renders out pretty fat files from After Effects, and those are not files that you're gonna be able to use from like presentation software. So in order to get these motions onto like a computer at church, you're going to want to compress these files to get them smaller so that they play nice and smooth. So that's what Adobe Media Encoder is good for. So I've got this line web file that I rendered out earlier. So I'm just going to drag this into this big open area in Media Encoder. What I want to change is I'm using H.264. That's a pretty great codec to use for loading things up onto your computer. But I want to change the preset here. I have some custom presets that I've made here, but for the sake of this tutorial, you can make your own presets when you figured out what you need your compression to do. But for now, we can do something like Vimeo 1080 full HD. So that'll set all the presets. I don't need audio because these are motions. They don't have audio. So I can uncheck the audio there if I want. And now I can just hit OK. And now it doesn't automatically start encoding. What I need to do is just hit this little play button here. And this will start encoding it. So now I've got this nice MP4 file that I just rendered out. Now I can upload this, because if we check and see how big this file is, so that's only 20 megabytes there. So that's really small and reasonable. So anyways, that is the end of this tutorial here. Play around with all these overlay files. Let me know what you think. My plan is to be continually adding new elements to this overlay file. So check back every now and then to see if there's new stuff added to it. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.